Simone Lawrence had always believed that discipline was what separated an excellent pilot from an average one. Feelings stayed on the ground. Once she stepped into a cockpit, there was only procedure, precision, and responsibility. That belief had carried her safely through thousands of flight hours. This morning, however, discipline was having one of the hardest battles of its life. She sat quietly in the left seat of the Gulfstream, completing the final pre-flight checklist while the morning sun painted the private terminal in shades of gold. Outside, the tarmac bustled with the usual quiet efficiency. Ground crews moved deliberately around the aircraft. Fuel trucks pulled away. Luggage was loaded into the cargo hold. Everything unfolded exactly as it always did. Everything. Except her. Her eyes drifted toward the terminal building for what had to be the 6th time in less than 5 minutes. A tiny smile appeared before she quickly hid it from herself. The last few days had changed everything. For an entire year, Simone had convinced herself that whatever existed between her and Mujin had to remain buried beneath professionalism. Then came the kiss in the cockpit. Neither of them had planned it. Neither of them had been able to stop it. After that, everything seemed to move at once. His engagement ended. A few days later, after giving both of them time to breathe, he asked if she would give them a chance. She had said yes. They were supposed to have dinner tonight. Instead, just before dawn, her phone had vibrated with a message from him. "Good morning. Plans have changed. We have to leave for Singapore today. An urgent meeting couldn't be avoided." A second message followed almost immediately. "Dinner has to wait, but only until tonight. I promised you dinner, and I always keep my promises." Despite herself, she smiled. "I'll hold you to that." His reply came almost instantly. "Please do." Even now, sitting in the cockpit as the ground crew finished preparing the aircraft, she found herself smiling at the memory. Movement outside the cockpit window pulled her from her thoughts. A familiar convoy of black luxury vehicles rolled slowly across the tarmac toward the aircraft. Without meaning to, she found herself watching. The rear door of the lead sedan opened. Mujin stepped out, tall, composed, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that looked as though it had been tailored specifically for him. His security team immediately surrounded him, yet somehow he remained the calm center of everything around him. As though sensing her eyes on him, he looked up. Their gazes met through layers of reinforced cockpit glass. Neither smiled, neither waved, neither could. But the brief exchange was enough. He gave the slightest, almost imperceptible nod before continuing toward the aircraft. Professional. Always professional. Minutes later, the cabin door closed. The engines came alive. The aircraft taxied toward the runway. Once clearance came through, Simone guided the jet into the morning sky with the same flawless precision she always had. If Derek noticed she seemed unusually quiet, he said nothing. Several hours later, Singapore unfolded beneath them like a glittering masterpiece. As always, Mujin remained seated until the engines had completely shut down. He stepped into the cockpit. "Thank you." His voice remained perfectly professional. Derek smiled. "Hope the flight was comfortable, sir." "It always is." His eyes met Simone's for only a fraction of a second. Nothing about the exchange suggested they had shared one of the most unforgettable moments of their lives less than 24 hours earlier. He nodded politely before disappearing down the stairs. The cockpit became quiet again. A few moments later, her phone vibrated. She glanced toward Derek, who was busy completing the shutdown checklist. Only then did she look. "Mujin, rooftop terrace, 9:30 tonight." She couldn't stop herself from smiling. She replied with only 4 words, "I'll be there." Singapore's financial district pulsed with its usual relentless energy. Inside the boardroom of one of the city's tallest towers, billion-dollar decisions were being discussed with remarkable calm. Charts appeared across enormous screens. Lawyers debated clauses. Financial advisors presented projections. Normally, Mujin absorbed every word. Today, his concentration kept wandering. His phone lay face down beside his notebook. Twice, he resisted picking it up. The third time, he lost the battle. He unlocked the screen, opened one conversation, and typed, "1 meeting down." A second later, another message followed, 3 more to survive. Across the city, Simone had just returned to her hotel room after reviewing the following day's flight schedule. Her phone chimed. She smiled before even opening it. "Take your time," she replied. "I'd rather you don't accidentally approve something you'll regret." Less than 30 seconds later, "Too late. I nearly signed a document without reading the last page." She laughed aloud. "Chairman Cho." "Concentrate before you accidentally buy another company." A quiet chuckle escaped him. It was small, almost invisible, but inside the boardroom, everyone noticed. The chief financial officer stopped speaking mid-sentence. One executive frowned. Another glanced toward Suho. Suho, seated a few chairs away, watched his boss with growing curiosity. Interesting. Very interesting. Mujin calmly locked his phone and looked back toward the presentation. "Please continue." The meeting resumed, but Suho had already made a mental note. Someone, somewhere, had managed to distract the most disciplined man he'd ever known. That alone was worth investigating. Another meeting, another conference room, another stack of contracts, another room full of people waiting for Mujin's approval. Yet somehow, every empty moment between discussions belonged to Simone. His phone vibrated once, not because she had written, because he had found another excuse to write first. "Thinking about you." Her reply arrived almost immediately. "Shouldn't you be thinking about your meeting?" "I'm trying." "Try harder." He smiled again. This time he didn't even realize he'd done it. One of the directors cleared his throat awkwardly. "Chairman." Mujin looked up. "Yes?" "We were waiting for your decision." He blinked once before looking down at the report. "My apologies." Then, with his usual calm authority, he gave his decision in less than 30 seconds. The room moved on. By the time the final meeting ended, the Singapore skyline shimmered beneath the night sky. Mujin loosened his tie as he settled into the back seat of his waiting car. Before the driver had even pulled away, he reached for his phone. Running 30 minutes late. A few seconds passed, then another message. "Will you wait for me?" Simone's reply came almost immediately. "I waited a year. 30 more minutes won't hurt." For the first time all day, Mujin laughed out loud. The driver caught the sound in the rearview mirror. He had worked for Mujin for nearly 6 years. He couldn't remember the last time he'd heard that laugh. The smile lingered on Mujin's face long after he lowered his phone. The convoy moved smoothly through the city. For the first time in years, the destination he looked forward to wasn't another meeting. It was dinner. With her. Simone was on her second cup of coffee when her phone rang. She didn't need to look at the screen. She already knew who it was. "Hello?" "I just got back." She smiled. "I figured." A soft chuckle escaped him. "I'll need about 10 minutes." "No problem." "Meet me at the rooftop?" "I'll be there." He hesitated for the briefest moment. "I'm looking forward to this." "So am I." The rooftop restaurant occupied the highest floor of the hotel. Open to the night sky, it overlooked the glittering skyline of Singapore from every direction. Soft piano music drifted through the air. Candles flickered gently on every table. The atmosphere was intimate without feeling staged. As the elevator doors opened, Simone stepped out. She saw him immediately. Mujin was standing near the hostess podium, one hand tucked into the pocket of his dark trousers. The moment he saw her, every conversation around him seemed to disappear. His eyes remained fixed on her. Slowly, a smile spread across his face. Not the polite smile the business world knew. This one belonged only to her. She walked toward him. "You look beautiful." No hesitation, no exaggerated compliment, just quiet certainty. She felt warmth creep into her cheeks. "You clean up rather nicely yourself." "I tried." She laughed. "I can tell." Without a word, he gently rested a hand against the small of her back as he guided her toward their table, beside the glass railing. Before she could pull out her chair, he had already done it for her. She looked up at him. "Thank you." "My pleasure." Only after she was seated did he take his own seat opposite her. For a few moments, neither of them reached for the menu. Neither of them seemed particularly interested in the food. They were simply looking at each other. Finally, Simone laughed. "What?" He shook his head. "I still can't believe you're here." "You invited me." "I know." His smile deepened. "I'm still getting used to the fact that you said yes." She lowered her eyes shyly. "I almost didn't." "I know." "I was terrified." "I know that too." She looked back up. "You do?" "You've spent your entire life making the safe choice." Her eyebrows lifted. "I have?" "You became a pilot because it was expected of you." She blinked. "You put everyone else's happiness before your own." Her smile faded into thoughtful silence. "And somewhere along the way," his voice softened, "you forgot that your own happiness mattered too." She looked at him for a long moment. No one had ever understood her quite that clearly. "I didn't realize you understood me that well from that one conversation." Sometimes people tell you much more than they realize. The waiter arrived just then, giving them both a chance to breathe. After taking their orders, he quietly disappeared again. Neither noticed. Their attention remained exactly where it had been since the evening began. On each other. "I've been meaning to ask you something," Simone said. "You can ask me anything." She rested her elbows lightly on the table. "After Jeju, did you ever think we'd meet again?" His answer came without hesitation. "No." She looked surprised. "You didn't?" "I hoped." He looked out across the glittering skyline for a brief moment before continuing. "I left Jeju thinking there was something I should have done." "What?" "I should have asked for your number." She smiled. "A few months later, we began looking for another captain." She nodded. "Derek told me." "We'd already started interviewing candidates." His smile returned. "Then Derek walked into my office." She couldn't help laughing. "Of course he did." He told me, "Sir, before you hire anyone else, there's someone I think you should meet. I've flown with her before. She's exceptional." The moment you walked through that door, He looked directly into her eyes. I recognized you. He smiled to himself. I was supposed to meet a highly recommended pilot. Instead, I found the woman I'd spent months trying to forget. She laughed softly. Honestly, I thought you didn't even recognize me that day. You were so composed. Nothing in your face gave you away. I recognized you the moment you walked through that door. I just had to compose myself. I was trying very hard not to stare. He paused, a faint smile touching his lips. It wasn't easy. You're very beautiful. For the first time that evening, they both laughed without restraint. The kind of laughter that comes only when two people are finally comfortable enough to stop pretending. And somehow, dinner had only just begun. Mujin picked up his glass. To new beginnings. Simone smiled, lifting hers. To finally saying yes. Their glasses met with a soft clink. For a while, conversation flowed as naturally as the evening breeze that drifted across the rooftop. They spoke about flying, about cities they had loved, the strangest passengers Simone had ever encountered, the countless hotel rooms Mujin had slept in over the years that had all begun to look exactly the same. They laughed far more than either of them expected. At one point, Simone was laughing so hard she had to put her fork down. You know, she said, wiping a tear from the corner of her eye, I always imagined you were incredibly serious. I am. No, you're not. I am. She folded her arms. Prove it. Without changing his expression, he said, I'm being serious right now. She stared at him for 2 seconds before bursting into laughter again. You planned that. I did. She pointed her fork at him. You're impossible. So I've been told. No. She shook her head, still smiling. I don't think anyone really knows this side of you. His expression softened. Not many people do. At one point, Simone looked at him curiously. Can I ask you something? You don't need permission. You've built companies all over the world. He nodded. You could have had anyone. His eyes rested quietly on hers. So why me? For the first time that evening, he didn't answer immediately. Instead, he considered the question carefully. When I met you in Jeju, he smiled faintly. You had no idea who I was. She laughs. I honestly didn't. I know. You just saw a stranger, took my hand, danced with me, and then you walked away. She laughs. I was completely embarrassed when I remembered it. He smiled faintly. But that night wasn't enough for me to know what I wanted. What came after was. He looked at her across the table. For the past year, you've been flying me. I watched you. I watched how you handled that aircraft, how disciplined you were, how calm you remained under pressure. He paused. It takes a particular kind of person to command something that powerful and take it into the sky with that kind of confidence. His expression softened. And somewhere along the way, I started looking forward to the flights, not because of where I was going. A small smile, because I knew you'd be there. He held her gaze. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Then I realized I was looking forward to seeing you before every flight, and missing you after every landing. He gave a quiet laugh, so I stopped pretending it meant nothing. For a few moments, neither of them spoke. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was peaceful, comfortable. The kind of silence that only exists when two people enjoy simply being together. Finally, Mujin reached across the table. His fingers found hers. He didn't squeeze them. He simply held them. Everything from this moment forward happens at your pace. His voice was calm, steady. I'm not going to rush you. I'm not going to pressure you. I've waited this long. If I have to wait longer, I will. His thumb brushed lightly across the back of her hand. I want this to be something we build together, not something either of us regrets. Emotion tightened unexpectedly in Simone's chest. No one had ever offered her patience before. People had expected, demanded, assumed. Mujin simply waited. She turned her hand over beneath his until their fingers intertwined naturally. You make it very difficult to protect my heart. A slow smile spread across his face. I'm hoping one day you'll stop trying. She laughed softly. Maybe. I can be patient. I know. Dessert arrived. Neither of them touched it. Coffee followed. It grew cold between them. Neither noticed. Time seemed to disappear. By the time they finally stood, more than 2 hours had passed. Simone stepped closer to the glass railing overlooking the city. The Singapore skyline stretched endlessly beneath them, every building glowing against the velvet darkness of the night. It's beautiful, she whispered. Mujin wasn't looking at the skyline. He was looking at her. She turned and caught him. Weren't you going to admire the view? I am. She laughed quietly. The city. I've seen the city dozens of times. He took a slow step toward her. I've never seen it like this. She tilted her head slightly. What changed? You. The single word settled softly between them. Not dramatic, not rehearsed. Simply true. The evening breeze lifted a loose strand of hair across her face. Without thinking, he reached up and tucked it gently behind her ear. His fingertips lingered against her cheek. Their eyes met. Neither of them spoke. There was nothing left to say. This kiss wasn't driven by surprise the way the one in the cockpit had been. That kiss had been months of restrained emotion breaking free. This one was different. It carried certainty, choice, promise. When his lips met hers, the kiss was slow and unhurried. She rose onto her toes almost instinctively, her hands finding his shoulders as though they'd always belonged there. He held her carefully, one hand resting at her waist, the other cupping her face with astonishing tenderness. The city disappeared. The music faded. For one perfect moment, there was only the two of them. When they finally pulled apart, neither moved very far. His forehead rested gently against hers. I've wanted to do that all evening, he admitted. A soft laugh escaped her. I noticed. He smiled. I was trying to behave. I appreciate the effort. I wasn't very successful. No. She smiled up at him. You really weren't. He laughed quietly. Come on. Together they walked back toward the elevator. Neither of them let go. When the elevator doors opened onto her floor, he walked her through the quiet corridor until they reached her room. She turned to face him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Neither of them seemed ready for the evening to end. He leaned down and kissed her once more. Gentle, lingering. When the kiss ended, he rested his forehead lightly against hers. You should probably go inside. She smiled. I probably should. Before I change my mind. Her laugh was soft and warm. You already told me everything happens at my pace. It does. He smiled. But I'm still a man who's been wanting you for a very long time. She felt herself blush. She reached for the door handle but didn't open it immediately. Instead, she looked at him one last time. "Good night, Mujin." "Good night, Simone." She finally stepped inside. The door closed quietly between them. For several long seconds, neither of them moved. Simone rested her back against the closed door. The room was silent, yet her heart refused to be. She smiled to herself, lifting her fingers to her lips as though she could still feel the warmth of his kiss. "Before I change my mind," she laughed softly. "You almost sounded disappointed that I listened." She slipped off her heels and walked slowly toward the floor-to-ceiling window. She should have been getting ready for bed. Instead, her thoughts kept drifting back to the man she'd just spent an amazing evening with. She had spent years making the sensible choice, the responsible choice, the expected choice. Tonight, for the first time in her life, she wanted to choose the choice that made her happy. Her phone lay on the bedside table. She looked at it, looked away, then looked back again. "What are you doing?" she whispered to herself. A smile slowly spread across her face. "No," she laughed quietly. "I'm too old to be acting like this." She picked up the phone anyway. His name filled the screen. Her thumb hovered over the call button. For a second, doubt returned. What if he thought she was moving too fast? What if... She stopped herself. Hadn't he just spent the entire evening telling her everything would happen at her pace? Hadn't he promised never to pressure her? Then this wasn't pressure. It was a choice. Her choice. Before she could overthink it again, she pressed the call button. The phone rang once. Twice. "No," she murmured, almost embarrassed. "Don't answer." The line clicked. "Simone?" She stopped. He didn't rush her, didn't finish the sentence for her. He simply waited. "I want to see you." Another quiet pause, then his voice came, lower this time. "Are you sure?" She looked out at the city once more. For the first time in years, she was. "Yes. I'll be outside your door in 2 minutes." Barely 2 minutes later, there was a soft knock. She opened the door. Mujin was standing exactly where he had promised. No security, no assistant, no bodyguards. Just him. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. He looked at her as though he still couldn't quite believe she had called. He held out his hand. She slipped hers into it without hesitation. His fingers closed gently around hers, warm, steady, certain. Together they walked toward the elevator. Neither of them let go. The hallway was quiet. The elevator arrived with a soft chime. He stepped aside, allowing her to enter first. The doors closed. For a few seconds, they stood shoulder to shoulder in comfortable silence as the elevator climbed toward the presidential floor. The elevator doors opened. They stepped out together. For the first time, not as chairman and pilot, not as employer and employee, but simply as two people who had finally stopped running from what had always been between them. Mujin led her quietly into the suite. The moment the door closed behind them, the world outside seemed to disappear. No ringing phones, no assistants, no board meetings, no flight schedules, just the two of them. He stepped closer, leaving enough space that she would never feel cornered. "I meant what I said tonight." His voice was quiet. "Everything happens at your pace. If all you want is for us to sit here and talk until morning," his eyes held hers, "that's exactly what we'll do." The nervousness in her shoulders eased. "You really mean that?" "I do." He reached up and gently brushed a loose strand of hair away from her face. His fingertips barely touched her skin. "So," he smiled softly, "what would you like to do?" She answered by closing the distance between them and kissing him. Mujin returned the kiss, the restraint they'd both carried for so long, finally giving way to the feelings neither of them had been willing to name. Outside, Singapore continued beneath the night sky. Inside the suite, time slipped quietly away. The rest of the evening belonged only to them, hidden from the demands of the world. And when sleep finally found them, it came with an unexpected sense of peace. The following morning, Simone's back where she belonged, in the cockpit, professional, focused, calm. Or at least she hoped she looked that way. Outside the windshield, the familiar convoy rolled across the private terminal toward the aircraft. Her heartbeat betrayed her immediately. Just the sight of the lead vehicle made memories of the previous evening come rushing back. She lowered her eyes briefly, trying to hide the smile threatening to escape. Thank goodness, she thought, she wasn't someone who blushed easily. Otherwise, Derek would have noticed before they'd even started the engines. "You seem unusually cheerful this morning." Derek's voice pulled her back. She glanced toward him. "Do I?" "You've smiled at least 3 times in the last 5 minutes." She laughed, reaching for one of the checklists. "I slept well." He studied her for a second before grinning. "Whatever the reason, I'm glad to see it." Before she could answer, her phone vibrated softly beside her. A message. She already knew who it was from. Mujin. "Last night was everything I'd hoped it would be, and somehow even better. I've been smiling all morning. Try not to let Derek catch you smiling too much." A laugh escaped before she could stop it. She quickly typed back, "You're distracting your pilot, Chairman." His reply appeared almost immediately. "Only until takeoff." She shook her head, unable to stop smiling. "Okay." Derek looked at her sideways. "Now I'm officially curious." She locked her phone and slipped it away. "It's nothing." He raised an eyebrow but let it go. Outside, the cabin door closed. Simone drew a slow breath. "Ready?" Derek asked. She smiled toward the runway. "Ready." The aircraft began to taxi, carrying them home to Seoul. Neither of them realized that once they landed, the quiet happiness they had found in Singapore would soon be tested by forces already beginning to move against them. "What did you do?" The shout echoed through the living room before Yerin could even look up. Her mother stood in the doorway, her face pale with fury, one hand gripping the edge of the marble console as though it were the only thing stopping her from collapsing. "What did you do?" she demanded again. Yerin slowly set down the cup of tea she had barely touched. "I didn't do anything." "You lost him!" Her mother's voice cracked. "You had everything. Everything! And now he's called off the engagement. Tell me what happened." Yerin looked away. "I already told you." "No." Her mother shook her head violently. "You told me the ending. I want the beginning." Silence settled over the room. 2 of Yerin's closest friends sat nearby, exchanging uneasy glances. Finally, Yerin sighed. "A few days ago, Yuna sent me a video." Her mother frowned. "What video?" "A video of Mujin and the pilot." "The pilot?" "The one who's been flying his private jet." Her mother's expression hardened. "What about her?" Yerin swallowed. "They were kissing." The room fell silent. "I was angry," Yerin admitted, "but I didn't call him. I wanted time to think before confronting him." She rubbed her forehead. Then he called me himself. Her mother leaned forward. And? He asked me to come to his penthouse. A tiny flicker of hope crossed her mother's face. I thought, Yerin whispered, I thought he wanted to explain. Instead, he told me he didn't love me. Her voice trembled. He said the engagement was over. And then? I showed him the video. Her mother stared at her. You what? I thought he should know someone was recording things behind his back. Her mother's eyes widened. Did you tell him who sent it to you? Yerin hesitated. Yes. For several long seconds, nobody spoke. Then her mother slowly covered her face. Oh, Yerin. Her voice was barely above a whisper. You've just cost that girl her job. Yerin blinked. What? Yuna. Her mother looked at her in disbelief. You told Mujin that Yuna betrayed his confidence. Do you honestly think a man like Mujin keeps someone around after discovering she's been secretly feeding information to his fiancé? Realization slowly spread across Yerin's face. I didn't think... No. Her mother let out a bitter laugh. You didn't. One of Yerin's friends cleared her throat carefully. There might be something else. Both women turned toward her. What do you mean? The friend hesitated. Do you remember the Jeju trip? Yerin's face immediately tightened. There's nothing to talk about. I think there is. Her mother looked between them. What happened in Jeju? Yerin remained silent. The friend finally answered. There was an incident involving the pilot. Her mother frowned. What kind of incident? Yerin confronted her in front of everyone. Yerin looked down. I was upset. You accused the pilot of being incompetent. The friend continued carefully. You embarrassed her in front of the crew. And one of Chairman Cho's security men recorded the entire exchange. Her mother's eyes slowly widened. He saw it? The friend nodded. Not only did he see it, he immediately banned Yerin from ever flying on his private aircraft again. The room became painfully quiet. Her mother slowly turned toward her daughter. I warned you. Yerin closed her eyes. I warned you over and over again that your temper would destroy everything. Tears filled Yerin's eyes. I didn't think... No. Her mother's voice was firm now. You never thought. You were jealous. You acted without thinking. And now you've lost the one man who funds the life you and I currently enjoy. She began pacing the room. No, I'm not giving up. She stopped suddenly. I need to speak with his mother. Yerin looked up. Mother, his mother has always been reasonable. If anyone can make him reconsider, it's her. She reached for her handbag, and if that doesn't work, her expression hardened. We'll find another way. The meeting was arranged for the following afternoon. Yerin's mother arrived 15 minutes early. She had dressed carefully, choosing elegance over extravagance, hoping to remind Mujin's family of the years their two families had shared. Yerin sat quietly beside her. For once, she said nothing. She simply stared through the car window as they drove through the familiar gates of the Cho family estate. Just a few weeks ago, she had entered those gates as the future daughter-in-law of the family. Today, she felt like a stranger asking for permission to come inside. The housekeeper greeted them politely and led them into the sitting room. We'll let Madam know you've arrived. Neither woman spoke while they waited. A few moments later, Mujin's mother entered. She welcomed them with a gentle smile. "I'm sorry to keep you waiting." Yerin's mother stood immediately. "Thank you for agreeing to see us." Mujin's mother gestured toward the sofa. "Please, sit." Tea was served. For several moments, the conversation remained polite. They spoke about health, the weather, business, anything except the real reason for the visit. Finally, Yerin's mother placed her teacup on the table. "I'll be honest." Mujin's mother nodded. "I expected nothing less." Yerin's mother drew a slow breath. "The engagement." Silence. "I believe there's been a misunderstanding." Mujin's mother looked at her kindly. "There hasn't. I've known my son all his life. When he reaches a decision, he rarely changes it." Yerin finally spoke. "Auntie?" Her voice trembled. "Please. I love him." Mujin's mother looked at the young woman with genuine sympathy. "I know you cared for him. But caring for someone and being loved in return are not always the same thing." Tears gathered in Yerin's eyes. "I can change." Mujin's mother smiled sadly. "This isn't about changing. If my son had wanted you, he would have chosen you." The words landed softly, yet somehow they hurt more because they were spoken with compassion instead of anger. Yerin's mother tried once more. "You've always had influence over him. Perhaps if you simply spoke to him." Before Mujin's mother could answer, another voice interrupted from the doorway. "I don't think that would help." Everyone turned. Grandmother Cho entered the sitting room with her usual calm dignity, leaning lightly on her cane. She looked first at Mujin's mother before letting her gaze settle on Yerin. "So," she said quietly, "I suppose this is about the broken engagement." Yerin's mother stood politely. "We were hoping you might speak to Chairman Cho." The elderly woman smiled faintly. "I've lived long enough to know there are some decisions that should never be made by parents." She lowered herself into her chair. "My grandson's future is one of them." Yerin swallowed. "Grandmother?" The old woman raised a hand gently. "No. I think it's my turn to speak." The room became still. "I've watched you for a long time. You are intelligent. You are beautiful. You come from a good family." She paused. "But those things are never enough." Yerin lowered her eyes. "You were possessive. You wanted every room to revolve around you. You expected people to fear you instead of respect you." The words were calm, almost gentle, yet each one landed with uncomfortable accuracy. "I heard how you treated members of his staff." Yerin looked up quickly. "Grandmother, I also heard how uncomfortable you made new employees." The elderly woman's voice remained steady. "I even heard about the way you spoke to his new pilot." Yerin's face turned pale. "You thought those things went unnoticed. They didn't." She folded her hands over her cane. "My grandson notices far more than people give him credit for." She glanced briefly at Mujin's mother before continuing. "Do you think people never told him? Do you think he didn't hear how nervous some of the staff became whenever you visited?" Silence. "You even spoke sharply to me more than once." I said nothing. Not because I approved, but because I believed time would teach you what I could not." She sighed softly. Apparently, time ran out first. No one spoke. The old woman looked directly at Yerin. I also chose to overlook the stories that occasionally reached my ears. She didn't elaborate. She didn't need to. Yerin knew exactly what she meant. The quiet lunches, the discreet meetings, the men she had convinced herself didn't matter because Mujin never asked questions. The grandmother continued. My grandson is not a jealous man. He has never believed in controlling another person. But do not mistake silence for blindness. Yerin's fingers tightened around her handbag. He simply chose dignity over confrontation. Another long silence settled over the room. Finally, the grandmother's expression softened, not with affection, but with the wisdom of age. I'll give you one piece of advice. When you eventually find someone else, be kinder. To the people who serve your table. To the people who work beneath you. And to the people who have done nothing except cross your path. She slowly rose to her feet. Because respect shown only to those above you isn't respect at all. She adjusted her shawl. And one more thing. Peace is something every man eventually searches for. If another woman gives him the peace he could not find with you, you should not hate her. You should ask yourself, why? Without another word, the grandmother walked toward the door. The meeting was over. For the first time, Yerin understood something she had refused to see. She hadn't lost Mujin in a single day. She had lost him a little at a time, and she hadn't even noticed. The drive back from the Cho estate was unusually quiet. Neither woman spoke for several minutes. Yerin stared absent-mindedly through the window as the city rolled past, replaying every word the grandmother had spoken. For the first time in years, someone had looked her in the eye and told her exactly who she was, without raising their voice, without insulting her. And somehow, that hurt the most. Her mother finally broke the silence. So, they've made their position clear. Yerin nodded weakly. They're not going to help us. No. Her mother's expression slowly hardened. They've chosen his side. She leaned back against the leather seat, her fingers tapping thoughtfully against her handbag. Then we stop looking outside. We look inside. Yerin turned toward her. What do you mean? The people around Mujin. The people who work for him. The people who hear things. The people who see things. There has to be someone. Yerin thought for a moment. The only one who ever helped me was Yuna. Her mother nodded. Good. We start with her. At almost that exact moment, several floors above the city, inside Cho Group headquarters, Mujin was thinking exactly the same thing. Suho stood across from his desk, tablet in hand. Mujin closed the document he had been reading before looking up. I want a complete review of everyone who has access to my personal life. Suho didn't ask why. He already knew. The house staff? Everyone. The drivers, the security teams, the housekeepers, the assistants. If anyone's loyalty is divided, they leave. Suho nodded once. I've already started. Mujin wasn't surprised. I thought you might have. There is one more. Suho already knew the name. Yuna. Mujin's expression remained unreadable. I don't employ people who report my private affairs to someone else. It won't happen again. It won't. Suho made a note on his tablet. I'll have human resources process everything today. Mujin stood and walked toward the window overlooking Seoul. After a moment, he spoke again. And Suho. Yes, Chairman. I don't want this handled publicly. No humiliation. No gossip. They're simply no longer employed. Suho allowed himself the smallest smile. As always, the quiet way. Mujin nodded. The quiet way. Less than an hour later, Yerin dialed Yuna's number. The call connected almost immediately. Yuna? I'm sorry. Her voice was shaking. They terminated my employment this morning. Yerin sat upright. What? They didn't even give a reason. I think we both know the reason. The call ended. Yerin looked slowly toward her mother. They fired her. Her mother closed her eyes for a brief moment. So. He moved first. She opened them again. We're running out of doors. Late that afternoon, Mujin finally picked up his phone. He smiled as Simone answered on the second ring. Hello? Busy? She laughed softly. Not particularly. I've just finished going over next week's flight schedule. There isn't much on it. He smiled. There won't be. She tilted her head. What do you mean? I'm not traveling for the next few days. A brief silence followed. Then he asked quietly, What are your plans? She glanced around her apartment. I don't really have any. I was thinking of catching up on sleep. I have another suggestion. She smiled. I'm listening. How would you feel about spending the next few days with me? My penthouse. No work. No meetings. Just us. Her heart skipped. I'd like that. His own smile appeared almost instantly. Good. Pack whatever you need. When you're ready, I'll send the car for you. She laughed softly. Okay. I'll see you soon. The drive across Seoul was peaceful. For the first time in a very long time, she wasn't heading somewhere because someone expected something from her. She was going because someone wanted her there. The realization settled warmly inside her chest. The elevator doors opened directly into the penthouse. Before she could take 2 steps, Mujin was already walking toward her. Neither of them said anything. He simply stopped in front of her, studied her face for a moment, then reached for her hand. His thumb brushed gently across her knuckles. I've missed you. She laughed softly. I have missed you too. He leaned down and kissed her, not hurried, not desperate, just long enough to make her forget the drive over. I'm glad you came. So am I. He took her overnight bag before she could protest. I'll show you where you'll be staying. She looked at him with mock suspicion. You'll be staying? He smiled. I was trying to sound like a gentleman. She laughed. And failed? Completely. She slipped her hand into his. I thought so. Still holding hands, they walked deeper into the penthouse. Everything felt strangely natural, as though she had been there many times before. He placed her bag inside the master bedroom before taking out his phone. He pressed a number. The housekeeper answered almost immediately. Good afternoon, Chairman. I won't require housekeeping for the next 3 days. A brief pause. Very well, Chairman. Also, if anything is needed, I'll call. Understood. The call ended. Simone looked at him. You gave everyone time off? He shrugged lightly. They've earned the break. She laughed. I have a feeling that's not the real reason. It isn't. And And the real reason? I'd rather not share you. Her cheeks warmed instantly. You say things like that so casually. Because they're true. Before she could answer, his phone vibrated. Suho. Mujin answered immediately. Yes. Chairman. The review is complete. And? Everyone whose loyalty was questionable has been removed. Good. There was some resistance. I expected that. But it's finished. Thank you. The call ended. Simone looked at him curiously. Everything okay? He smiled reassuringly. Everything's exactly the way I want it. She studied him for a second. She knew better than to ask questions about business. If he wanted her to know, he would tell her. Instead, she reached for his hand. So, what do people normally do when they're hiding away for 3 whole days? He looked at her. I was hoping we'd figure that out together. She smiled. I think I like that plan. He intertwined his fingers with hers. So do I. Outside, the lights of Seoul slowly began to glow as evening settled over the city. The following morning drifted into the penthouse with soft sunlight pouring through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Seoul stretched endlessly below them, wrapped in a pale golden haze, while inside, everything remained wonderfully still. Simone lay curled beneath the oversized duvet, wearing one of Mujin's white dress shirts. Mujin had been awake for nearly an hour. He sat against the headboard with a cup of coffee, quietly reading through documents on his tablet. Every few minutes, however, his attention drifted away from quarterly reports and board approvals, settling instead on the woman sleeping peacefully beside him. He smiled to himself. She frowned slightly in her sleep, rolled onto her stomach, buried her face into the pillow, and mumbled something completely unintelligible. He chuckled. So this is what the famous Captain Simone Lawrence looks like before 8 in the morning. Without opening her eyes, she muttered, I heard that you were supposed to. She pulled herself upright, resting comfortably against his shoulder while he wrapped one arm around her. For a while, they simply stayed like that, the city humming quietly beneath them while the morning drifted past outside. Neither of them realized that, somewhere else in Seoul, plans were already beginning to form that would soon test the peace they had found together. Yerin had never imagined silence could be so loud. Her mother's living room, usually filled with the sound of television or conversation, felt suffocating that afternoon. Neither of them had spoken for several minutes. She sat on the edge of the sofa, her untouched cup of tea growing cold between her hands. I tried calling him. He blocked my number. I sent emails. No response. I even drove past the penthouse. The security team wouldn't let me inside. Her mother sighed heavily. And the staff? Yerin's expression hardened. They're gone. What do you mean they're gone? The people who used to tell me what was happening, they've all disappeared. Her mother leaned back. So he really planned everything. Yerin nodded. He closed every door. Neither woman spoke for several seconds. Then Yerin's voice became unusually quiet. What if... She hesitated. What if she simply wasn't there anymore? Her mother looked at her. What do you mean? Yerin swallowed. I don't know. Maybe she has an accident. Maybe something happens. People have accidents every day. The room fell silent. Her mother didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stared thoughtfully at the floor. After a long moment, she spoke. No. Not unless there is absolutely no other choice. She looked directly at her daughter. That kind of decision changes everything. But we do need to remove her from his life. Yerin nodded slowly. Then how? Neither of them had an answer. At that exact moment, Yerin's phone rang. Unknown number. She frowned before answering. Hello? A calm, professional voice came through the speaker. Good afternoon, Miss Yerin. My name is Suho. I'm calling on behalf of Mr. Cho. Both women froze. Her mother's eyes widened immediately. Yerin sat up straighter. Mujin? Yes. Mr. Cho would like to meet with you and your mother. She exchanged a quick glance with her mother. When? Tomorrow. 10 o'clock. At Cho Group headquarters. Her heartbeat quickened. She tried to keep her voice steady. Did he say why? I'm afraid he did not. There will be security waiting to escort both of you upstairs. If the time is convenient. Yerin looked at her mother again. Her mother nodded immediately. We'll be there. Very well. We'll see you tomorrow. The line disconnected. For several long seconds, neither of them spoke. Then Yerin slowly lowered the phone. Her mother was the first to break the silence. I told you. Yerin blinked. What? He wouldn't ask to see us unless something had changed. A flicker of hope returned to Yerin's eyes. The private jet touched down smoothly just after sunset. Inside the cockpit, Simone and Derek completed the shutdown checklist with the quiet efficiency that had become second nature after years of flying together. Only after every system had been secured did Simone finally reach for her phone. A message was waiting. Mujin, I'll wait outside. A tiny smile appeared before she could stop it. She typed back, okay. Derek noticed. He always noticed. He stood, collected his flight bag, then watched her slip her own phone back into her handbag. She seemed lighter, happier, as though some invisible weight had disappeared. 15 minutes later, Simone finally climbed down the aircraft stairs. A row of black SUVs waited near the tarmac. One man leaned casually against the first vehicle, hands inside the pockets of his tailored charcoal overcoat, waiting. Only for her. Mujin. He saw her immediately. The smallest smile crossed his face, not the polite smile everyone else received, the one that belonged only to Simone. Derek followed her gaze, then looked back at her, then back at Mujin. His eyebrows slowly rose. No? Simone tried to look confused. What? He laughed. I knew it. She blinked. Knew what? I've been flying with both of you for months. He folded his arms. You think I didn't notice? He looks at you like everyone else has disappeared. And you've been glowing for weeks. She covered her face with one hand. Oh my goodness. I knew something was going on. She laughed quietly. So, he grinned. It finally happened? She nodded, very softly. Yes. For a second, Derek simply stared. Then the biggest smile spread across his face. I am so happy for you. He pulled her into a warm hug. You deserve this. She hugged him back. Thank you. He leaned back. You know, I honestly thought he was going to spend the rest of his life pretending he didn't have feelings. She burst into laughter. I thought so too. Derek shook his head. Well, I'm officially retired from pretending I don't know. She laughed again. Deal. He looked toward Mujin, who was still patiently waiting beside the SUV.
He didn't even come over here.
No.
He knew you'd finish your work first.
Simone smiled. He always waits. Derek nodded with quiet approval.
I like that.
He picked up his luggage. Go. Your boyfriend has probably been counting every minute. She playfully nudged his shoulder. Bye, Derek. See you next week. She turned and walked toward the waiting SUV. The closer she came, the softer Mujin's expression became. When she stopped in front of him, neither of them spoke immediately. He simply looked at her, as though confirming she was really there. She smiled. Without another thought, she reached up, slipped one hand lightly around the back of his neck, and kissed him. It wasn't long. It wasn't dramatic. Just warm, certain, affectionate. The following morning, at exactly 10 o'clock, a sleek black sedan rolled through the gates of Cho Group headquarters. Yerin adjusted the sleeve of her cream-colored designer jacket for what felt like the 100th time. Beside her, her mother sat unusually quiet. Neither woman spoke as the car came to a stop beneath the towering glass building. Employees walking through the grand marble lobby slowed almost imperceptibly. Some recognized Yerin immediately. Months ago, she had walked through these doors as the chairman's fiancée. Today, she was simply a visitor. The realization stung. The elevator doors opened onto the executive floor. Waiting outside was Suho, impeccably dressed as always. He bowed politely. Good morning. Mr. Cho is expecting you. His expression revealed nothing. No warmth, no hostility, just professionalism. He led them through the long corridor before stopping outside the chairman's office. He knocked once. A calm voice answered from inside. Come in. Suho opened the door. Mr. Cho. They're here. Mujin looked up briefly from the document in front of him. Thank you. Suho stepped aside, allowing the two women to enter. The office felt exactly as Yerin remembered. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Seoul skyline. Dark walnut shelves lined one wall. Everything was neat. Everything perfectly ordered. Everything exactly the way Mujin liked it. For one foolish second, she thought about walking over to hug him. Instead, his calm voice stopped her. Please, take a seat. There was no smile, no affection, not even familiarity, only courtesy. Yerin slowly sat down. Her mother followed. Suho quietly closed the door behind them but remained inside, standing several feet away. The silence that followed felt deliberate. Mujin closed the file in front of him and folded his hands on the desk. I appreciate both of you coming. Yerin forced a hopeful smile. I'm glad you called. I've been hoping we could talk. He looked at her for a brief moment, then at her mother. You've both known my family for a long time. My grandmother respected that. My mother respected that. And because of that history, I believed it was appropriate that we end this chapter with a conversation. Yerin's smile faltered. Something about his tone felt final. Her mother leaned forward. Mujin, we're willing to... He raised one hand gently, not rudely, simply asking her to let him finish. She fell silent. He continued. I have no intention of revisiting that decision. I called this meeting for one reason. His eyes settled calmly on both women. I'm not a man who believes in coincidences. The room became perfectly still. If tomorrow, Simone is crossing the street, and a car suddenly loses control, I won't consider it an accident. Neither woman moved. If she becomes ill after eating something, I won't consider it unfortunate." His voice never rose. It remained frighteningly calm. "If an aircraft she commands suddenly develops an unexplained mechanical problem, I won't call it bad luck." Yerin felt the blood drain from her face. Her mother stared at him in stunned silence. He leaned back slightly. "If anything happens to Simone, anything at all, my first thought will not be coincidence. It will be intent. And the first people I will come looking for," his eyes met theirs without the slightest hint of emotion, "will be the two of you." Silence. Heavy. Unmoving. Yerin's mother finally found her voice. "Mujin, are you accusing us of something?" "I'm preventing something." His answer came immediately. "I sincerely hope this conversation proves unnecessary." But hope has never been a security strategy. He stood, slowly, deliberately. "You've both been well taken care of. Yerin, every allowance I promised has already been transferred. The apartment is yours. The investments remain yours. The jewelry I bought for you remains yours. You will not suffer financially because our engagement ended." He paused. "But Simone is where my responsibility begins now, and I will not fail her." The words hung in the air like a final judgment. For the first time, Yerin understood. There was nothing left to fight for. Not because another woman had won, but because the man sitting before her had already chosen. Completely. Irrevocably. Yerin and her mother walk out of the building. Neither of them speaks. When they finally get into the car, she finally whispers, "He's really gone." Her mother, for the first time in the entire story, has no answer. She simply stares ahead, then quietly says, "Drive." The Mediterranean stretched endlessly beneath a cloudless blue sky. The yacht drifted lazily across calm waters, far enough from the shoreline that the only sounds were the gentle waves brushing against the hull and the occasional cry of distant seagulls. Simone lay comfortably on one of the sun loungers, oversized sunglasses shielding her eyes from the afternoon sun. A light breeze played with the loose strands of her hair. She smiled to herself. 7 months. 7 incredible months. Sometimes it still didn't feel real. She heard footsteps behind her. "You've been lying in this sun for almost an hour." She smiled before opening her eyes. "There you are." Mujin stood beside her, effortlessly handsome in a crisp white linen shirt with the sleeves rolled to his forearms and navy trousers. One hand held 2 chilled glasses of fresh lemonade. The other held a bottle of sunscreen. He raised it slightly. "You're going to burn." She laughed. "I knew that was coming." He sat beside her before placing one of the glasses into her hand. "You laugh, but you'll complain tonight." She nudged his shoulder. "You sound like my mother." He smiled. "No. I sound like someone who has spent 7 months reminding you to wear sunscreen." She laughed again. "Fine. You win." He squeezed a little sunscreen into his palm. "Come here." She obediently turned toward him. He gently rubbed it across her shoulders, across her arms, carefully, as though even after 7 months, he still couldn't believe he had the privilege of caring for her. She watched him quietly, then rested her head against his shoulder. "The last 7 months have been the happiest of my life." He turned to look at her. "So have mine." She closed her eyes again as the warm breeze drifted across the deck. Her thoughts wandered, back through the months, back through the memories. The penthouse glowed with warm lights, the towering Christmas tree filling the living room with the scent of fresh pine. Simone stood by the window, her phone pressed to her ear. Her father's voice came through, firm as always. "Your flight itinerary." "I haven't received it." She took a slow breath. "I'm not coming home this Christmas, Dad." Silence. Then,
"What did you say?"
"I'm not coming home." His voice hardened immediately.
"Christmas is celebrated as a family.
"You know that."
You've never missed one.
"I know."
Then book your ticket."
Her fingers tightened around the phone. For years, that sentence alone would have ended the conversation. She would have obeyed. She always had. Every important decision had somehow become his decision. But not this one. She closed her eyes briefly before speaking. "No, Dad." Another silence. Longer this time. Then came the question.
"Why?"
She looked across the room. Mujin was carefully untangling a string of Christmas lights, completely unaware that one conversation was quietly changing her life. A small smile found her lips. "I'm spending Christmas with my boyfriend. I'm staying in Korea." For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Finally, her father exhaled.
"We'll discuss this another time."
The call ended. She hadn't even realized Mujin had been watching. He walked over quietly. Without asking a single question, he simply opened his arms. She stepped into them immediately. He held her close, one hand gently stroking her hair.
"You okay?"
She nodded against his chest. "I think..." She laughed softly through the emotion gathering in her eyes. "I just grew up." He smiled.
"No."
He kissed the top of her head.
"You finally gave yourself permission to."
There had been countless visits to his mother and grandmother, sometimes for Sunday lunch, sometimes for afternoon tea, sometimes for no reason at all. His mother welcomed her with quiet warmth. His grandmother, as always, spoke her mind. "A home isn't built with money," the old woman had said one afternoon with a knowing smile. "It's built with the person who makes you want to come home." Then she'd glanced at Mujin. "I'm glad you finally found yours." Her friends, of course, never let her forget. During one of their video calls, Anita and Gabriella burst into laughter all over again. "I still can't believe it. The man you accidentally gave a lap dance to is the man you're actually in love with." Simone covered her face. "Can we please retire that story?" "Never! Not in this lifetime." They laughed even harder. Anita wiped tears from her eyes. "If somebody turned your life into a movie, nobody would believe it." Simone laughed too. "Honestly, neither would I." Italy had been breathtaking. Paris had been unforgettable. He had rented an entire rooftop restaurant overlooking the Seine simply because she'd once mentioned wanting to see the Eiffel Tower sparkle at night without crowds around her. He never did things to impress her. He simply listened, then quietly remembered everything she'd ever said. The little things, the things most people forgot. Those, somehow, he never did. The warmth of the afternoon pulled her gently back to the present. She opened her eyes. The sea stretched endlessly before them. Mujin was still beside her, still holding her hand, still looking at the horizon. Without thinking, she intertwined her fingers with his. He looked down, then smiled. She leaned against him once more. The yacht sailed quietly toward the setting sun. Behind them,
lay everything they had survived. Ahead of them was a future neither of them feared anymore. For the first time, they were exactly where they were always meant to be.